everybody. Welcome back to Around the Emirates podcast with Sara Mousa, where I speak to guests from across UAE about topics you want to hear about. Today, I'm joined by the amazing Sara Beattie. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to have you on the show. So, I invited Sara to be on the show today because she is a UAE-based positive psychology practitioner and menopause coach. That is a mouthful, but that is super important. Please, Sara, tell me your story.
Thank you. Well, that means I look at the best of creating a good life, the things that help you thrive. So it's not about being happy all the time. It's about learning those skills to help you live a good life. And I'm working mostly with women in sort of midlife and menopause.
Wow. How did you get started in that? That's such a specific place to start, like in terms of your psychology of it.
So I've been a teacher for over 30 years and absolutely loved my job. And I've been very fortunate to work in several different places around the world, but always in schools that encouraged teachers to have a bit of freedom and understand their children really, really well. So that meant we got to look at what makes a really good learner. And that meant we got to naturally coach with kids, naturally use hands-on methods, and that meant things like working in metaphor, what colours are Tuesday, and all these things that helped children express themselves and talk a little bit differently about their learning rather than just learning the facts. It's like, well, okay, what do we do with that? It's learning to learn. And that really helped those kids who were struggling a little bit with language and how to put their thinking into words. So that led into somebody saying to me, well, actually, you should try this coaching thing. You just do it all the time. There's a course going on. Do you want to give it a go? And I did, and discovered coaching and the power of coaching for adults, and just thought, wow, there's something really special in there. And I really want to know more about that. And I really want to find out more and learn more. And so when the opportunity came up for me to do a master's degree in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, I thought it was going to be all about this amazing stuff. And then I'd get the chance to put my learning into practice with my dissertation with something to do with education and how to help those kids a little bit more and develop those learning environments. And also at that time, I was looking on a wider scale at the wellbeing within the school and the staff and doing stuff for parents too. And what was happening personally at that point was, well, what I now know is perimenopause. I didn't know at the time, and it was at that time a few years ago where nobody had heard of the word. And so I was noticing that I was dropping the ball a bit. I was not remembering, I was used to being at the top of my game, and then things were just not quite feeling the same, and I didn't know why, and it was quite distressing, and I wasn't sleeping. And I'm known between you and I in my family as doze because I can sleep anywhere like a dozy dormouse. So for me not to be sleeping, that was huge. Was getting headaches and just lots of little things, but I just figured, you know, as women often do, I'm just busy. I got stuff on. I'm trying to learn stuff. I want to do the job best. I've got these kids and I'm trying to figure out the best way for each of them individually, and moving country in the middle of all this, and COVID was coming in the middle of all this. And so, you just carry on. And for a couple of weeks on my walk to school, I had a beautiful walk to school past some ancient oak trees, all the greenery that was really uplifting and wonderful. But there was just this bit of street, and I renamed it, just a short bit of street, and I renamed it from what it was to Permission Street. And it was along there that just on my morning walk, never on my walk home, just on the way to work, I gave myself permission to consider all the people in my life, personally, professionally, particularly those I love most, and why they might be better off without me. And one morning I got to the end of the street and put my headphones back in, done that, and it was always very calm thoughts. And then somebody on the radio happened to say, if you're having dark thoughts about this, this is not okay, and you should probably get some help. And in my mind, I'd rationalized it all by, this is something that other people do and other people think about, and this is not me, and I'm okay. And there was something about that radio show that morning that just made me go, yeah, actually, this is not okay anymore. And so I went back to my doctor, who had previously told me to sail on through because you've made it this far. And I just said, actually, this is not okay. I'm forgetting what I'm teaching. I'm forgetting kids' names. I'm having parent meetings and mixing up who I'm talking about, like just shockingly or embarrassing stuff for somebody who had been, on top of everything. And so I popped back to my doctors, and at this point, I had been doing some research in the background, and I've discovered the word perimenopause. Suddenly light bulbs are going off. It's like, oh my gosh, all of these things that I just sort of put to one side, actually, they're all part of this jigsaw puzzle. And this is what it is. And I'd got hold of the only book that was available at the time, which was a book by Dr. Louise Newson. And I took it to the doctors with me, and I said, I think it might be my hormones. And of course, I got the classic, no, it sounds like you're depressed. And I said, here, I need you to read this book, and I'm going to come see you in a week's time. And very fortunately, the doctor agreed. And so when I went back, he said, and he was, I don't know, he must have been in his 30s, so a young man. And he said, I've actually given it to everybody in the practice because we don't get trained on this stuff. We don't get trained well enough on this stuff. It's, it's mentioned. And I think there's some really valuable stuff in here. And he said, I apologize for suggesting you needed antidepressants last time you came. Let's try this instead. And I remember walking away, and I was feeling really happy for myself that something was about to change, and it really did. And I remember thinking, how come I had to do the research, and how come nobody I know talks about this? Not my mum, certainly not my grandma, but I got friends the same sort of age, and nobody's talking about this. And that's really weird. Women usually more than happy to share whatever, So I ended up, for my master's dissertation, rather than looking at education, I took it to menopause. And my worst symptom at the time, and probably still is brain fog. And so I did a research study on self-compassion for perimenopausal women experiencing brain fog. And I was lucky enough to work with women in several countries around the world. We had Australia, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi, Germany, Italy, UK. And the universal message for this was, oh my gosh, thank goodness we've got a chance to talk about this. I thought I was going mad. I thought I had Alzheimer's. I feel isolated. I'm lonely in my home. I can't talk to anybody about it. People laugh at me. I feel irrelevant. Where's me on a poster? I don't want this. This is not normal in the society that I'm living in. And these were just repeated messages. And it just felt so wrong, This is 50% of the population everywhere. It's a universal experience. So it made no sense that women didn't feel they could talk about it and understand it. Because once you understand something, then that mystery and that fear is gone, right? So I did the study, and then because we were coming out of COVID, I finished my master's January 2022, and there was this opportunity for a conference in Iceland. And I thought, well, this is it. I'm going back to teaching. I love teaching, going back to teaching. But I'm really proud of this thing that I've done. And we discovered that with some self-compassion and this group opportunity to talk and share and feel heard and validated, that these women shifted from this feeling of isolation to agency, where they all felt empowered and had little plans what they were going to go off and do. And in fact, some of these women are still in touch, even though we did the study 2021. So that's awesome, right? So with the conference, I think everybody wanted to do everything because it was coming out of lockdown. And anybody who'd been on my course, it's like, oh, let's go to Iceland, let's do it. And I'm thinking, actually, this is really important. This is an important message. And I wasn't accepted as a speaker that time because it was doubled up. So there were a lot of people applying and who were on hold from 2020. But I was given a poster slot. And I thought, so I don't know if you've ever seen a scientific poster, but they're really quite dull and full of numbers and just loads of writing. And you have to kind of almost get a magnifying glass to see what's going on. And I just thought, that's not what I want to share about these women. I'm not sharing numbers. We are not numbers, we are people with voices and stories. And so in a sea of traditional posters, mine was like a movie poster. And it was this picture of a lady with the title Isolation to Agency. And I put it up and I stood next to it and I felt really nervous. I'm going, have I done completely the wrong thing here? And several people came, some younger guys came and took photos and sniggered. And one lady rushed up and said, where can I see this movie? This is me. But the most memorable conversation was with a man who must have been, I'm going to guess, in his 60s. And he came up and he said, this is not a scientific poster. And I said, well, it is. It just doesn't look the same as the others. And that's because I'm not telling numbers. I'm telling stories of real people. And I said, let me tell you about it. And he said, so I told him about the study and how the women had felt and how we had shifted from this isolation to agency. And we talked about how 51 for Western cultures is the average age of menopause, which is the day you've had since 12 months since your period stopped. It's also the highest frequency of females taking their own lives. It's also the highest frequency of divorce and of women stepping down from their jobs. And he listened and he said, actually, I'm a psychiatrist and most of my patients are in this age bracket and are women, and I didn't know any of this.
No.
Yeah. And in that moment, that's when I thought, I really need to do a bit more of this stuff. I can't just leave it here. And when I got back to work, back in the classroom, having all the fun, people at work started asking, oh, what happened at the conference? And I just started talking more and more about it. And that ended up morphing into a menopause cafe at school for teachers. Sometimes parents would come, talk to different staff members, not the educators. And so this little community sort of just grew. And I ended up writing policies and delivering workshops and stuff. And on the side, people would say, can we do something just one-to-one? So there's this big need for people who are happy to share and want to share in a group. There's something very, very powerful about the wisdom in a group. But there's also a need for people who prefer to be a little bit more private and don't want to talk in front of others. So that's why I offer both one-to-one and group coaching. And so I was doing this on the side, and when my husband had been working in the region for COP28, and there were job opportunities for him afterwards, he said, well, if we go to Dubai, you could do this. You could do your coaching. And so that's what's led me to here today. Yeah.
I gotta say, Sarah, I've been in awe this entire time. I mean, usually I might jump in and ask some questions, but I feel like in this entire interview, you've told your story so beautifully that I didn't even need to ask a word. And I'm
Oh,
just so incredibly grateful that you have shared such a raw and personal experience with me. I mean, you've mentioned at least 4 or 5 different situations and where you showed personal growth and perseverance. And I'm so sorry that you ever felt like you didn't have that person to come to you and validate how you were feeling. But I'm so glad that you have now become that person for other people. And to be honest, I only have one last question for you after the most beautiful story that you've just told. And that is, what is something you really want people to know about what you do, about perimenopause? What should they walk away from this episode understanding?
thank you for that. Well, I think I think people need to know that this is something that impacts everybody. If you're not a woman, you know a woman. You know, we've all got mothers, sisters, work colleagues. So it impacts everybody on some level. And I think it's really important that women are given opportunities to share in a way that makes sense to them, which is my new research, which is sharing whatever way you want to, which is poetry or ceramics or nail art or all the other things that people have come with. And that's come from knowing what is usual and what is unusual for you. And so I think it's just important that you tune in and know what's going on with you. And when things start shifting, try and keep a note of what's changing and be be open and ready to talk to somebody, whether that's a medical practitioner or a coach or whoever. But don't sit in yourself.
I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time to share that with me today. And I hope a lot of my female listeners can definitely use this information for their benefit as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.